Everybody, just before we get started with the show here, I want to make a quick shout out to the good folks at Springs Homes for supporting Studio 809 and this podcast. They're in the business of real estate because they love helping clients achieve their goals. Competitive, collaborative, and trustworthy. Meet the real estate pros at springshomes.com.
This is Studio 809.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You can find me on my website, my new and improved and vastly better looking website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media accounts, my columns at the Colorado Springs Independent, all the other podcasts I've done, my photography store website also there at hikingbob.com. And also you can sign up for my email list and get an email every week on everything I've done the previous week as far as news, podcast columns, any other news that's come up, anything that's interesting will come out once a week there. And you can also help support this podcast by becoming a patron at Patreon, patreon.com/hikingbob. And you can be rewarded for your patronage. Today, my guest is Michelle Seubert, who is the manager at Barr Lake State Park, which I've been to taking pictures of eagles. And it's this beautiful park with a big lake and a reservoir, I guess it is. And it's a cool place to visit, especially this time of the year. Of course, it's cold as anything this time of the year, but but you get to see eagles nesting there and hawks and all kinds of wildlife there. But we're talking to Michelle today. And Michelle, thank you for being on.
Of course.
As for the 125th anniversary of Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And I understand that you are the coordinator for all the festivities that CPW is going to have this year.
Yeah, so I've been honored to take the lead for our celebration. And it's a great time. You know, we're celebrating Colorado Parks and Wildlife. It's celebrating 125 years. We were Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and I'll go into a little bit of the history, but we were the first state agency created to conserve wildlife in Colorado. So through this celebration, we really want to celebrate with Colorado the whys. Why is Colorado Parks and Wildlife important? And why is it important to the citizens and the community in Colorado? So, a little bit about our history, Bob. So in 1897, the Department of Forestry, Game, and Fish was established. And then right around 1963, the Department of Game and Fish merged with state parks to become the Department of Game, Fish, and Parks. So then we keep going to 1972 is when the agency was separated and there was the Division of Wildlife and the Division of Parks. So we go a few more years to 2011 when we merged again to become Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And I think what's really unique about, if you look at our history, how we were separated and then we were together, separated, and now we're together again, is that we have so many different employees and resources. When we come together, we can really use all those to benefit everybody in Colorado. So I think that's what the greatest part about being a merged agency is, we have all these resources, whether it's park rangers or game wardens or biologists or our marketing and accounting people. We all come together to work as one team.
I did not know that in 63, the two agencies were actually merged for about 9 years. I had no idea that. I thought in 2011, that was the first time that had happened. So there you go. I'm learning something new myself in the first couple of minutes here. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us about what, we're talking about the 125th anniversary. Obviously, as we've seen, CPW, as we know it now, I imagine there was not a state parks agency in 1897. So when did we first see the state parks be created in Colorado?
So the first, there used to be a distinction between a state park recreation area and a state park, and it had to do with the different amenities and resources. But in 1959, Cherry Creek was the first recreation area. Then, if you go to 1962, Lathrop State Park was the first state park that was opened. So I'm looking through here. So, really, right around 1959, Cherry Creek was the first recreation area that opened up.
Okay.
And, we just announced last year our newest state park, Sweetwater. So now we have 43 state parks.
Right. Yes. Sweetwater Canyon, and then just still in development is Fisher's Peak.
Right. Fisher's Peak was our 42nd, and then Sweetwater is our 43rd.
Awesome. And Sweetwater is an unusual thing in that it's a cooperative with the U.S. Forest Service. So the Forest Service kind of own the land, but CPW is going to just kind of manage it, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that we celebrate in our 125 years is all our partnerships and our success stories, whether it's with the Forest Service or BLM or some of our partners like Ducks Unlimited or Pheasants Forever, all those conservation organizations too, they really play into the success of the wildlife conservation that's here in Colorado.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. In 1897, you said it was the Division of Forestry, Game, and Fish, which sounds like when I watch TV, and my wife and I love watching all those game warden shows on TV, which they're a lot of fun to watch. That's typically how it is. It's a lot of states have a game and fish, so to speak, and maybe forestry is a separate thing. Not a lot of them have a combined system like we do here. Is this pretty unusual that everybody falls under one agency?
There are lots of other states that have that as well. So Texas has game and parks together. So, we still have game wardens and we still have park rangers. We all work for the same agency and we have similar jobs, but different as well. So, like for instance, in 1975, Susan Smith was the first appointed district wildlife manager or game warden. And she was stationed in the Vail district. And then in 1974, Carolyn Armstrong was the first female park ranger. And back then they used to call park rangers conservation aides. So some of the titles have kind of changed. And what's really unique about Carolyn Armstrong too, is that she was the first park manager at Barr Lake.
Oh, cool. So you're following in her footsteps.
Yeah, and she was actually my first supervisor at Cherry Creek State Park. She was a manager there for a long time. And that's where I started my first seasonal job in 1989.
Awesome. Very cool. I learned all kinds of great history just in the first couple minutes. This is great.
Yeah.
When the division was first founded, Forestry, Game, and Fish, obviously 1897, Colorado is a much different state than it is now. Tiny population, I imagine. How many, I imagine that you're talking here probably game wardens and forest wardens, or what kind of makeup was the department at that time?
There was game wardens, and then initially game wardens, and then later park rangers, or the conservation aides that we called them.
What was the forestry component of it? I mean, we're used to having the Forest Service kind of take care of things. So what was what the forestry component of that agency was at the time?
I don't know that, Bob.
Okay.
But I can find out. Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, we're talking a long 125 years ago. It's a long time back. It's just interesting that that's included in that. I find that interesting.
Yeah, that is something. Yeah.
So at the time they were called game wardens. We call them district wildlife managers, area wildlife managers. Is the job much different than it was then as it is now? Were they mostly just checking on hunting and fishing regulations then, as opposed to? I know the district wildlife managers do a lot of actual management and stuff.
Yeah, and being a park ranger, I can't totally talk to that, but I think one of the biggest things for all of us is that we manage a lot more two-legged wildlife now, right? Because the populations are rising. So I think that's probably a big thing for all of us, whether we're a park ranger or a game warden, is really managing the two-legged wildlife. And how do we offer recreational opportunities, conserve our resources and our wildlife, but then do the education, which is still a great part of our job. Is we want to have people be safe and recreate, but we want to preserve what's wild in Colorado, right?
Sure.
So like in 1903, I was looking this up. 1903, the first hunting license was required, and then in 1913, the first fishing license was required. So if you look at the history of like the licenses and why are licenses put in place, that's where a lot of our funding comes, but also we're preserving how many fish you can take, what type of wildlife, big game that you can take. So it's just interesting to see the the progression of our agency and what we do as a whole to protect all of the wildlife and natural resources in Colorado.
And I imagine, Colorado being a centennial state, so founded in 1877, that in those first years, there probably wasn't enough population to worry about over harvesting of fish and wildlife. So probably nobody really saw a big need to have hunting licenses or fishing licenses, which would kind of make sense. But as the population grew, then obviously things had to be done to manage it. How has the job of well, let me go back a little bit and we'll just continue on with the hunting and fishing thing. Now your district wildlife managers are, I think they're biologists, so to speak, or, they have a lot of other things they do besides just going around and checking on hunting and fishing licenses. Was it always that way? So when you were starting to issue hunting and fishing licenses, were they pretty much just what they were doing, or were they always kind of in the animal biology? And I'm not a hunter or fisherman, so I'm just guessing here what they are.
I think they always were, as a game warden or as a park ranger, especially a game warden, you're looking at protecting the resources. And what does that mean? Whether, now we have 19 fish hatcheries, right? And so I think there was always that component of them, enforcing, rules and regulations and hunting and fishing license, but also the biology behind it, whether it's a fish hatchery or looking at the land to see how many elk can be in this area. I think that's a big part of their job, even back then. Okay.
And let's move up a little bit with when, the first recreation area said Cherry Creek in 59, Lathrop in 62. I've been to both of those places. Lathrop's a beautiful park down the south end of the state. Were park rangers, I guess, initially they built-in component of this right away when they started these areas and designated them and moved along with developing them?
They were. I mean, I think they've evolved. When you talk about them being conservation aides versus all the way to an officer. So there was one time where park rangers were armed, and now park rangers and game wardens are fully commissioned officers. And that goes with us, and one of our priorities is visitor safety. We're here to provide visitor safety and protect our resources, and we're able to do that by being fully commissioned officers.
Okay. So initially they were just guides, I guess, and maybe just kept an eye on things and did maintenance and stuff. Is that a good way to put it?
Well, I think they were still enforcing. They just didn't have that next level. So I think a lot of education. Right now we also hire seasonals in the summertime, which are Title 33. So they only enforce parks and wildlife regulations. So I think there was a lot of that back then too. So there was just different levels of enforcement. Gotcha.
Yeah, I volunteer down at Cheyenne Mountain State Park, so I work with their rangers, both the seasonal and the full-time rangers down there quite a bit. But people may not understand that difference there, and be honest, it doesn't matter. Just there's always going to be somebody out there to, at the very least, enforce the park regulations.
I'm just looking on here too. In 1965, the Game Fish and Parks Commission approved entry fees for 25 state recreation areas. Fees were set at $5 per year and $2 for a 5-day permit.
Well, I'd like to see those fees again.
Me too.
Was the agency always, and either half of the agency, whichever one you want to talk about, the game side of things and the park side of things, was it always a fee-based entity, or was it at some point a tax-funded entity?
For state parks, we did receive state funding, a portion of state funding on and off for a number of years, but really we are an enterprise agency now, which we get our funding from hunting, fishing licenses, park passes, snowmobiles, things like that. So I think there's different pots of money that, through the years we've been funded by. Right now we get lottery funding, Great Outdoors Colorado. Through the wildlife side of the agency, there's also federal dollars, matching dollars for hunting licenses. So I think Colorado's unique in where we have different pots of money to support, whether it's the wildlife conservation or recreational opportunities, which I think we've seen through COVID the last few years, that being outside is very important to people.
Okay. So at some time there was some tax funding, but it's always been kind of designed to be a self-supporting, I guess the best way I could put it, a self-supporting agency.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, there was on the park side, we did receive some tax funding from the state, and we get a little bit now, but we are an enterprise and we get it by our users. So. Gotcha.
Is that, do you know if, is that very different from the way other states do it, or other states more state or tax funded and maybe still have fees, or how does that work in other places?
I think it's a wide variety of things. Okay. I think looking across the United States, there's some people that get tax funding. There's some that are user based like we are. So I think it's just a wide range depending on probably, how big their system is, what other funding they might have, opportunities.
Okay. Yeah. I as I travel around, I see different places, and it's sometimes hard to figure out how they run them. And, Colorado, I think is a little different with enterprises and things like that. So we're a lot different in a lot of different ways, I guess. Yeah. What other, you've given me some great dates, a lot of stuff I had no idea about. Not that I was a CPW historian by any stretch or anything like that. I know a lot I remember in 2011 when the agencies merged again. And can you tell us about how that came about? Was it an effort to just reduce overhead and make the two agencies more efficient? Is that how they came about?
I think, as the state government works is that, we look for ways to be efficient. And I really think that was a big thing that played into that, is how can our state agencies be efficient? And we, when we merge, like I said, we have a lot more resources, and we're powerful together.
Okay. It seemed to me at the time that there was certainly some, and we're not going to belabor this too much, but there was certainly a look at how the two agencies shared a lot of positions that Governor Hickenlooper at the time said, if we merge this, we don't need as much there, and we could filter some of that down to the bottom, I think, not to the bottom, but to we like to call the worker level as opposed to the office level type of thing.
The field level. So we have one leadership team now. So I think putting those resources out in the field was important. And certainly as the visitation in the outdoors has increased, that's important. Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about how the state park system has grown over the years. I mean, the first one was in recreation was in 59, the first state park in 62. So in just about 60 years, we've gone from just a couple of places to 43.
Yeah.
How's that? Has that happened pretty linearly, or has it happened in spurts? I mean, I know we had Cheyenne Mountain, and then we went a number of years before Staunton State Park was the next one, and then a few years, and then all of a sudden, boom, we got Fisher's Peak, and then boom, we've got Sweetwater Canyon. Has it always been, do we add a bunch at the beginning when we first created the agency, or how did that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at like the 70s, so 1975, Chatfield, Lake Pueblo, Roxborough, 1977, Barr Lake, 1980, Mueller and Trinidad. So it seems like from the 70s through like 1998, there was a lot of properties acquired. And then you look at 2001, John Martin, 2006, Cheyenne Mountain, Elkhead, and then you go all the way to 2013 to Staunton. So I think there was a big push, of acquiring those lands in the 70s to 90s, and then it kind of leveled out, whether that was because of funding or different other things going on. But I think in the last few years, Parks and Wildlife has really looked at, where can we find areas to protect, and then also to provide those opportunities for people to get outside and enjoy the outdoors.
Obviously, Colorado's population, just boomed in the last few years. What was visitation like in our state parks when they were first created? Any idea? Were they hugely popular like they are now, or were they kind of not so much? Or do you have any idea how that worked early on?
I can tell you from being at Barr Lake, I've been at Barr Lake for 13 years. You go back to even when I first came here in 2007, we probably had about 84,000 visitors a year, maybe. And we're up over 300,000 now. And we continue to grow. So I don't think that there probably was as much visitation and maybe as much emphasis on an agency like Colorado Parks and Wildlife that really that educates people about what a state park is, or what a wildlife area is, or the fact that you can get outside and go hunting and fishing. So there probably wasn't that education piece to it for people to know.
What other great points in history do you have to share with us?
Well, I think one thing too is that we want to celebrate with people our success stories. Mm-hmm. So one of them, like if we talk about elk, in 1910, the U.S. Forest Service established the elk population in Colorado to only have about 500 to 1,000 elk. From 1912 to 1928, 350 elk were relocated from Jackson Hole, Colorado, and was relocated to Jackson Hole. And it was a successful management. So the estimated population now is 287,000, the largest in North America, in Colorado. So, and then if you look at, the Greenback cutthroat trout, they were presumed to be extinct by 1937. And then they were noted to be found in the South Platte and Arkansas rivers in the late 1950s. And then that discovery launched an aggressive conservation campaign. Thanks to the work of the dedicated biologists, hatchery staff, volunteers, and others, many more populations of native cutthroat trout were established. So, and then going all the way to the black-footed ferret in 2001. So I think what we want to do is we also, through this 125th anniversary, we really want to celebrate our successes with everyone and tell them about, the elk, the trout, the bighorn sheep, all of those, wildlife species that would be extinct. Even here at Barr Lake, we talk a lot about the bald eagles. At one time they were on the endangered species list. They're not anymore. It's 2007. And, we have over 300 nests just on the Front Range. And that's unheard of. And I really think those are stories that we want to share, and we want to share with the people in Colorado to say that, this is why Colorado Parks and Wildlife is here. And, we're a wildlife conservation agency, recreation, and we really just want to tell people about that.
You mentioned the cutthroat greenback trout. I always want to make sure I get that right. There's a swath of land here in Colorado Springs that's protected now because it's one of the places where they're not native to here, but they were brought here many years ago. And now it's one of the few places they actually still exist in the Bear Creek, just to the southwest part of town here. So yeah, that's part of something that actually touches us here down in the Colorado Springs area. Tell us about, you mentioned bighorn sheep. I love getting pictures of those. They sometimes make it down as far as Garden of the Gods, which creates a traffic jam and B, a lot of people oohing and ahhing and taking pictures. How many of those do we have in the state?
So they were nearly extinct in 1876. And then in 1885, they were protected for hunting for nearly 68 years. And then after successful disease management and regulated hunting, the population of sheep is over 7,000. The first successful bighorn sheep trap and relocation in the nation occurred in Tarryall in 1944. So, that's just another success story of, all the different people in our agency that have to work together, whether it's a biologist or a game warden, to have, we have hunting licenses required. We're protecting the areas where they live. And so that's just another success story. And you get to go out and take great pictures of them.
Which I love doing when I get to see them. And I just posted, matter of fact, I posted a picture of some bighorn I shot in Garden of the Gods, I think a year or so ago, and I posted on my Facebook page just over the weekend. I was just going back looking through stuff and found it in there. When state parks are proposed, or when they're planned, or when they're acquired, is it a matter of, are they viewed as just a recreational thing, or are they also established to maybe protect some wildlife? So is there kind of like dual purposes when we look at a state park, or is it just like, this is a cool place to build some trails? How does that work?
No, I really think that there's a lot that goes into when you're looking at a state park. So for instance, I'll give an instance of Barr Lake. The whole southern end of our lake is a wildlife refuge. In that you can't hunt, you can't fish, and you can't have a boat. On the northern part of the lake, you can fish 10 horsepower and under boats. back behind the dam, we even have hunting. We have waterfowl and we have dove. I recently talked to one of the managers up at Sweetwater that's going to be there, and they have a bald eagle's nest that's in an area on their lake. So they were calling to talk to us about, well, where are your trails and how do you have to close them off and things like that. So I really think when a state park is made, it's really meant, a long time ago, Barr Lake was a buffalo wallow too. So as a whole, when we look at parks and land, what's important for the land? What's important? What is the inventory of the wildlife species there? And also, how can we protect that, but provide those other opportunities for the visitors that come there? We manage over 900 species of wildlife in Colorado.
And that doesn't include all the college kids.
No, that's not the two-legged wildlife.
I'm kidding. I am kidding. Before anybody writes me any emails, I'm kidding. I live in a neighborhood that's heavily populated with college kids, so we kind of joke about that then. So what is CPW going to be doing? Well, actually, when is the actual 125th anniversary? What day is that?
It's April 16th is like the day, but we are doing a lot of celebrations throughout the state. One of them is going to be April 7th, and we'll be at the Capitol, and we'll be presenting things outside the Capitol. And other things that we're going to be doing and celebrating, and where you can find out about them is, you can go on our Colorado Outdoors Online blog, on our social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. You can go to any of our blogs. We're going to have some educational things come out. We have 125 things to do in Colorado. We have a new mascot that's going to be Albert the Bighorn Sheep. It's going to be super fun. We have an app called Agents of Discovery. So it's like Pokemon Go. So you download it on your phone. So there'll be some state parks in different areas that have that, where you can download and learn about that area, park, or even the 125th anniversary. We'll have a lot of different swag items, whether it's chapstick or stickers. We do have some retail items that we're going to sell, sweatshirts and hats. And we have a really cool 125th logo that's right there. And what's really cool about that is it has the aspen leaf, was Colorado State Parks logo many years ago. That was a big prominent part of their logo. And then of course we have the Bighorn Sheep. So they kind of combined it together. So there'll be a lot of different retail items people can buy to celebrate as well.
Well, I can't wait to see some of that swag come out. Should be pretty cool to grab. So the 7th is the big thing at the State House. The 16th is the actual anniversary. So will there be, I guess there'll be events at all the state parks all around the state?
Yeah, there'll be events around the state parks, and you can just watch our social media and our website for all those postings. We'll have different educational displays. We'll have a poster that we're going to sell, and then we'll have timelines to all the different dates that I talked about. We're going to be putting those in different kinds of formats to share our successes and our stories with all of our visitors. So it's really important that we want to tell about our history.
And will the people on the wildlife side be doing similar things at their state wildlife areas and stuff like that? Yeah. Will they be included in this too?
Oh yeah. So everybody. So we have wildlife areas, we have parks, we have regional offices. So you're going to be able to find all of these things all over the state. So
cool.
Fish hatcheries. Yeah, everywhere. Everybody will have all these different things. We bought some tablecloths and some posters, some banners that you'll see around. So this really is celebrating all over the state and all of our areas and parks and regional offices. And
so besides managing one of the busy state parks, you get to herd all the cats on this too.
I do. And I think it's an honor to be able to help tell our story. And the best part is I get to travel around to some of these events around the state. So I haven't had the opportunity to visit some areas. So I'm really looking forward to getting out and about. This is your chance to go visit some of those places you're usually too busy to get to. That's right.
Well, when I was up there at Barr Lake a couple of weeks ago, I stopped in and chatted with your folks at the visitor center. They were very nice, and we chatted for a little bit. And there were a lot of people out there. It turned out to be an unseasonably warm day, which I think might have affected why I got skunked on seeing any eagles that day. They were probably all like, I just go over here. Right. And they were having a good time. But a lot of people there. I was real impressed that you guys are doing some pretty cool work there on that one boardwalk, I think it is, that you're working on, that trail that's getting rebuilt. Looks really nice. I need to come up there in the summer, not when it's like usually cold, and to hang out there in the summer and see how things are there. Anything else you want to tell us, Michelle, about the 125th anniversary? I can't wait to see all this information come out and people just look at it and really read up on what CW. What else? Anything else you want to tell us?
No, I just think we really want to celebrate our successes and include everybody. So I encourage everybody to go to our websites and our social media and just learn about everything that is happening and be a part of it. Learn about our history and the success stories that make Colorado a very unique place to live and to play.
Well, as somebody who volunteers at a state park, I say it's always a joy working with the staff there and at other state parks I get to visit. And I've talked to the people on the wildlife side, and they're wonderful people to talk to. And it helps to understand how what their jobs are. So I appreciate all the work everybody at CPW does. And it's a lot of fun working with them, and of course visiting all the state parks. I visit some of the small ones like Manco State Park, a little tiny state park down there by Mesa Verde that I think a lot of people miss that one because they see Mesa Verde in their windshield and that's where they want to go. And Manco State Manco State Park's this beautiful park around the reservoir with a tiny little campground and access to the national forest behind it. And boy, if you haven't visited a nice state park, that's one to go. It's a short drive off of 162. It doesn't take that long to get there. But there's so many of those little places too.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned volunteers. And one thing is that our volunteer program for the Division of Wildlife was started in 1993. And then state parks was 1997. And then we average now with Colorado Parks and Wildlife about 300 hours of volunteer time a year. So that's a lot of people volunteering in fish hatcheries, wildlife areas, and parks. And we appreciate all the volunteers and the love and the passion that they bring. And they're a part of our success as well. So thank you for volunteering.
300 hours?
300,000.
Oh, okay. I can say 300. I do 100 myself.
So 300,000.
That's cool. No, that's kind of what I thought you meant. I just wanted to make sure I got that right. Well, Michelle, this is going to be a heck of a fun year, I think, coming up. I think, starting now, but I mean, obviously it's already started, but obviously starting in April when this really kicks off at the state cap, I think it's going to be a fun year for people to go visit our state parks.
Yeah, I do have one other thing I just remembered is that we are collaborating with 18 different breweries. So it'll come out where we're going to be partnering with these breweries. There's a couple distilleries and kombucha and coffee as well. So there's 18 of them that we're going to partner with. And there's even going to be a beer festival at Chatfield State Park in September. But it's just another way that we're kind of incorporating some of the business side and, our local breweries to be a part of our story and our fun for the year. So
are they going to be making like special brews, or can you give us any secrets?
They're going to be making some special brews. There'll be some special logos. And in the next couple of weeks, it'll be announced what those breweries are and what they're going to be doing to be a part of the fun.
Well, I can't wait for that. Now you're talking my language here, breweries and distilleries.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to chat with us and talk about the upcoming anniversary of CPW. I think it's going to be a blast. I'm just looking forward to it. I'm glad to have you on here. And if we'll keep an eye on, I'll post links with this. Sure. So check out the show notes for links to CPW's website and all that other kind of good stuff. And we'll go from there. So Michelle Seubert from Barr Lake State Park, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Bob. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us, because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.